Okay, welcome to episode 9 of the Mayor's Mixtape. I'm Haley Sue Robinson, Director of Public Affairs.
City of Pueblo Mayor Heather Graham.
Brian McCain, Chief of Staff.
Okay, awesome. And don't forget, you can find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Buzzsprout. And if you're not a podcast person, you can watch it on Government Channel 17 with Comcast. But I did notice that we have 2 5-star reviews.
We do.
On our Spotify. So I'm very excited about that. And so I'd like to encourage folks to like, subscribe, rate, and share it with your friends. And don't forget that you can suggest a topic or ask a question by emailing us, mayor@pueblo.us. Okay, so Mayor, let's get into the work session from last night. There were a couple things discussed about the budget, a few suggestions and a couple of questions asked. I wanted to initially have us start with a breakdown for the listener about how the budget process works, like the timeline of the budget. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this will be my second budget that I've presented to City Council. So we're going to start that process here soon.
Okay.
With the different departments. So what will happen is the directors will put together their budget that they're going to present to me. We'll go line by line and compare what's been spent last year, maybe the previous year on project-wise and their budget requests. We'll look at capital projects. So each department submits capital projects that then I decide what capital projects to forward on through that year, what makes sense in a whole overview for the city for each respective department. And really, it just depends how much funds we have to work with. So the capital projects, it's decreased significantly over the last 3 years. So we went from $22 million to $12 million to just $3 million last year, just based off of our revenues. So we'll look at capital. We'll look at individual budgets. Last year, City Council asked us to come and present a few of the departments, some of the larger departments, to them while they were making their asks, and to tell City Council essentially what their asks were going to be, what their capital outlook was going to be for 2025. And then after we go through all of the departments, we sit down in a smaller group. So it's myself and finance and HR, and go through the different asks. And we kind of look to really see what the needs are of each department. They come back in, we say yay or nay on what projects they want to do. Last year we had lots of staffing requests. We didn't approve any new positions in the city other than the 3 or 6 new firemen for the new fire stations, because those are a necessity. We can't operate the station without them. So it's a long, drawn-out process. The same time we're doing the budget cycle, we're also doing the audit from 2024. So you're really comparing 2024's numbers with 2025's numbers and the outlook for the remainder of the year. So I have to present to council the first meeting in October, and then they have a month where we kind of go back and forth. I think last year I presented like 7 times to City Council on different areas of the budget. So, this year President Aliff, requested kind of an earlier start, earlier conversations on what City Council wanted to see as far as the budget, if they want to make budget cuts, what that looks like. And so Councilor Gomez requested that we cut the budget 10 to 15%. Right. That could be done potentially when it comes to operations of the city. We would cut down on projects or capital, but when we talk about city employees, that's a whole different story. As it relates to the 3 unions that we have in the city, how the individuals are hired between full-time and part-time, what positions can be cut, what the quality of life services that would no longer be a services that's provided to the community, because a lot of those positions are part-time employees. Okay. And per our 3 CBAs, which are contracts with their unions, you have to cut all part-time staff and staff that's on probation before you could look at removing full-time positions within the City of Pueblo. So a large number that sticks out to me is from the Parks Department. Their part-time staff is over 300 employees. And so if we have to cut part-time employees, it would be our parks department would take a large hit. The city would suffer with quality of life services like the swimming pools, the kiddie rides, streetscape, weeds, grass mowing, golf courses. Yes, golf courses.
So the things that are important.
The service side is really something that City Council is going to have to look at, and I'm not even sure that they're aware of the impact or what department to use part-time employees. A lot of our part-time employees come from the police department when it comes to reporting. So we already have had several issues over the last year when it comes to making reports to the police department. So those individuals would essentially be non-existing. So in order to make reports, evidence, all of those things, they really need to be looked at, and City Council really needs to know what the effects of the quality of life are going to be when it comes to the community if those are the decisions they want to make.
Okay, so because it was mentioned last night that there could be a potential cut, there was an ask for that. You mentioned that you were planning to come back to City Council and give a presentation. When can we expect that will be on the agenda?
Probably in the next 6 weeks, so the information is fresh. So I've asked all of the departments who currently have part-time employees to put together what it would look like if their part-time staffers were eliminated and what services would no longer be provided to the community.
Okay.
And, especially in Parks Department, although their part-time wages are in the millions, they also generate about $900,000 back to the city's general fund with all the services they provide, concessions, park rides, rental space in the pavilions and such. And so City Council is really going to have to look at those two factors and decide what the best move forward is.
Okay. That's helpful. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, so last year in your budget letter to the City Council, you noted that there was a designated reserve at 12%, and that was something that was discussed last night too, in addition to maintaining the Tabor Reserve. Can you kind of share what that looks like moving forward with reserves and maybe what your recommendation might be?
Yeah, City Council can set the reserves that they would like to see it fluctuated from 10 to 12% over the last several years, which could be $1 million to $2 million difference. So that is the money that has to stay designated in the reserves if something was to ever happen to the city. So
got it.
After those reserves, the city has about $19 million left in its larger reserve bucket, and that's we've seen a huge decrease in that reserve over the last 4 years. We transfer about $10 million a year out of the reserves in order to balance the budget and continue with the capital improvement projects that were slated from debrucing.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for outlining that. Also, one of the suggestions last night was about increasing revenue and what that might look like. I know we've discussed this previously with the suggestion of a potential grocery tax. We also discussed the revenue that short-term rentals might generate, and then the work to bring new development to Pueblo Boulevard. But are there other revenue sources currently that are being discussed by City Council or that have been brought to you?
No, City Council has brought no new proposals on revenue generation other than the short-term rentals that Councilor Martinez brought, and we heard that it would only generate about $60,000 dollars. So over time, that would make an impact, but not a single year itself.
Yeah, that's not going to make up our deficit. Okay, great. Let's move on to legislation update. Last week we were still awaiting House Bill 1147. Is there an update for that, maybe from Chief of Staff McCain?
Yes, so 1147 has basically been held over since it passed and went back to the House for the Senate amendments. I'm actually looking up the calendar and agenda today, and it's not on it.
Really?
So, again, there was rumor of a conciliatory amendment on it, so I don't know what's going on because this is kind of unusual when it comes to this sort of thing.
Really?
So we're kind of in a holding pattern. The governor has expressed that he's feeling he should veto that. So, again, I think I said it last week, they're kind of willing and dealing in the background to see what can be changed or adjusted for the governor to not veto it. But our other one, Senate Bill 62, failure to appear, was signed by the governor last Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the other one we asked that he veto, but he did sign off on that.
Okay.
And that's the update.
Okay. Also, last night we heard from our lobbyist, Gil Romero. He mentioned that the state budget is headed to the governor's desk. He mentioned K through 12 was fully funded and higher ed received notable funding to assist with affordable tuition. Is there anything else from a city perspective that we're concerned about or looking forward to regarding the state budget?
They cut our funding for the court.
Yeah,
I know that was one.
That was the big one. Some of the funding that we use to pay for the defense council or whatever you call it, the people that need it, it's funded by the state, and they did cut that out, which kind of ties into 1147 because it makes that a requirement. Even though we did it already, that was something we were doing consistently. It did cut that revenue source out for the court, which means that if we continue to do that program, we're going to have to come up with the money.
Yeah.
The funding would come from the city's budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of with 1147, that's what they call an unfunded mandate. So they pass a law or a bill, sign into law, and even though it doesn't have a financial fiscal note on it,
right,
it indirectly causes a city, municipality, or county to spend money on it. A lot of that goes into compliance too. So you'll see these bills passed that say adjust land use code, but it adds a level of compliance to it from the city's perspective, which means we have to spend more manpower time or possibly hire somebody else, not to mention just the fees and subscriptions that we have to buy new software for. So it's something that the state, they do a fiscal note to find the impact, but they get a lot of criticism for the unfunded side of that. So the more regulations you put on a community, the more the community is going to have to spend to comply to it. And they don't consider that with a lot of their legislation.
Okay. There also was the mention about Senate Bill 77 that was vetoed by Governor Polis. I don't know if that was something that the city particularly took a stance on. This bill would have given municipalities more time to respond to core requests, with the exception of journalists, which would require us then to still respond in the appropriate designated time frame. But Polis said he didn't like the 3 different timelines. Did we take a stance on this one?
We did not.
Okay. But I did find it interesting that he vetoed it because I think that potentially gives us the opportunity to remain hopeful for 1147 in that veto.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are hopeful.
Okay. Great. So this kind of dovetails from last night's work session, but I wanted to talk about economic development. You've talked, Mayor, about economic development being a priority for you, particularly discussing the incentives for Pueblo Boulevard, utilizing PEDCO incentives. Is there any progress update that you can share with us or what that potentially looks like on the horizon?
I mean, as far as the PEDCO, the city has been meeting with PEDCO, which is our contractual agreement board that we use to bring economic development into the city. We've shared our concerns with them about the ballot language as it relates to primary job and really how difficult it has been over the last few years and how we haven't seen very many new businesses come into the community. We've actually seen more businesses leave than we've seen come. And so it's frustrating. It's frustrating for PEDCO. It's frustrating for the city. It's frustrating for the citizens who pay the money. And so we're looking at alternatives to be able to use that funding for infrastructure from development that's going to create economic catalysts, drive sales tax numbers up, and not necessarily just attached to a primary job. So next week I'm traveling to Castle Rock to meet with their Economic Development Council and see how they use their funds, the different programs that they have implemented to expand businesses, attract businesses, and retain businesses. Tomorrow, Chief of Staff McCain and I are headed to Grand Junction for their Economic Western Conference Development Forum. So that'll be exciting to go make some connections with Grand Junction. They're a very similar community to Pueblo, and so
similar size.
Yeah, I want to see what they're doing, what works for them, and what isn't working for Pueblo, because everyone's frustrated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then I guess are your expectations to find what's working in other communities and potentially bring that back, or what are your expectations?
Absolutely.
Like?
See what changes they've made, see what they're doing, see how they're attracting prospects to come to the community, and see how Pueblo can mimic that. I think that's something that we need to focus on. We need to work together. We have two arms of the city, the Urban Renewal Authority and PEDCO, who's supposed to be helping with economic development. So I think that this is a chance maybe to bring some new perspectives in and some new ideas when it comes to economic development in the city.
Great. Okay. Can't wait to hear more and follow up after. So this week you're going to Grand Junction, and then next week you're headed to Castle Rock? Yep. Great. Okay, cool. I also know you just mentioned it. You want to work more closely with Pura. We worked with them on the Da Vinci Museum and the future of the hotel and the Riverwalk. Are there other Pura projects that are on the horizon, or anything that we should know about potentially there?
So they're also working on the Dillon URA. So off Dillon Drive, right by the mall, where you've seen all that dirt being moved around.
Yeah, they've raised that all up.
Yeah, out of the floodplain. So we have some developers who are looking to bring in 7 businesses.
Okay.
To that location, another car wash being one.
Okay.
But some retail and restaurant efforts. I've heard Panera Bread, maybe, so that would be exciting.
Could get a bread bowl with some soup.
You get a bread bowl and some soup.
Okay.
Yep. And so that district is currently at all of the entities, the different entities that receive the property tax. Trying to get the sign off for that one. So that's an exciting development.
Great.
That's also coming forward. So I think Pura has 14 active TIF districts. What I would like to see happen is when PEDCO is bringing prospects in to the community, that they work with Pura to drive those prospects into one of the districts. To generate property tax, to provide more public improvements and infrastructure. And I think that's what needs to happen. I think that's why those two entities exist, in order to help the city create economic development. So the city's really been the facilitator with some of the newer projects that have come into the community, the hotel potentially on the Riverwalk, the Da Vinci project. So we're out there begging for business, and we just need to make sure
we're open for business. Essentially, right?
Business. We want you to come here. We have incentives to offer. We have 2 great tools, PEDCO and Pura, incentivizing tools that they have. The city really doesn't have any incentivizing tools other than waiving tap fees, which we do for development, for housing developments. You're going to see one on the agenda on the 28th for a housing development that's coming on the east side. Okay. City's looking to waive $250,000 in tap fees. This will be a 5 complex, apartment complex.
Oh, wow.
Off of Oakshire, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. It will be affordable housing. They're going to have a pool. It's a really great thing for the east side.
That's fantastic.
Brand new living space in the area where there isn't any, and so we're happy to partner and do what we can as far as incentives. So those are the kinds of incentives that the city could provide. Waiving tap fees, really. Potentially looking at waiving sales tax or use tax for developers. You won't see that until we have to pass a ballot issue come this November. But really just trying to collaborate with the arms of the city who should be working towards bringing more development into the community. So we're excited about that. This morning I had a great meeting with SwissPod.
Oh, cool.
So we know our friends at SwissPod who have a Hyperloop test track out at the Puebloplex. They're looking at bringing their manufacturing plant to Pueblo. So we met with them, and that was really exciting.
Great.
They had been offered previously locations in Colorado Springs to bring manufacturing, but we heard from their CEO this morning that
they love us.
They love Pueblo, and Pueblo is where their heart is. So
great.
We've set up some meetings with PEDCO and Pura, next steps moving forward. So that would be really great to
That's
land
fantastic.
a project like Swiss Pod here in Pueblo, Colorado.
Good. And I think another thing, you mentioned that there's not a lot that the city can do as far as economic development, but I would push back on that a little bit because we have 3 new fire stations going in. And so while that might not seem like economic development, the one on the west side, I actually happen to be out there today, Station 11. The reason we're putting it in there is because of the housing. Yeah, the housing infrastructure and the need for it.
Yeah.
And then, same thing with Station 8 and now mentioning the apartment complex on the east side, Station 6. That's what we can do is ensure safety, security,
right.
and, protection to folks.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about it a few times, but one of the things that's incredible about our fire department is that, our rating allows for lower insurance rates for folks. And I think that's something that when developers come or new homeowners come, they realize we're well protected. They feel safe in our community and that there's access right there. Because imagine moving into one of those new complexes on the west side and not knowing where your nearest fire station is going to be. So
you're right. I take it back.
Okay. All right. I know. I don't like to disagree with you often, but I think there are things that they don't look like economic development. But it is, and it's planning for the future. And you look at all of the investment that we did with the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act, with wastewater and planning there. Even the infrastructure we put in prior to the boathouse and the channel extension, we did a lot of infrastructure improvements there. And it's not glamorous. It's not exciting to say, hey, we put wastewater in.
Yeah. But it's a need.
It's a need, and it's planning for
a requirement.
The next group of folks to move into our community. So I would argue we're doing our part. Okay, good. Well, okay, so you covered the Grand Junction in Douglas County. So I think next week we'll plan to hear how Grand Junction was, and then look forward to hearing about Castle Rock. Anything else that
we have? Our last town hall.
Oh, sure. Okay.
On the 30th.
That's next Wednesday
at 5:45. So it'll be our last town hall that we're out speaking to the community about 2A.
Okay.
I think I've spoke about 2A every day for the last 3 weeks at different.
Oh no, it's like 5 weeks.
Between different groups and small groups, large groups. Just people who want to hear the city side, what the city is looking to do, because we can't campaign like Black Hills Energy. We have to do ours organically and grassroots style. We don't have $1.5 million to donate into a campaign. So
we don't?
We don't.
Okay.
Well, we do, but we can't use it for that,
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Okay.
We're the underdog.
We are.
Yeah, it's okay, though.
That's all right. Okay, so next week we'll plan to hear those updates. Anything else that we need to know about?
I think so. Nothing going on this weekend that's spectacular here.
No, but we do have an open house next week with the EPA grant. I know we're going to be using some funds there, so that's next Tuesday, April 29th. That's also at Rawlings Library. That's from 5 to 6:45, so that'll be exciting.
Oh, and if anybody is looking for the feasibility study that the city conducted from GDS, it's now posted.
It's on the website.
On the website under Public Works?
Yep, under Public Works.
Getting lots of calls about where citizens can find it.
You can also find it on the homepage, pueblo.us, and if you click on Black Hills 2A, there's an entire webpage that has everything. There's a video, there's some information, and then the feasibility studies there as well. So
great.
That way you don't have to type in the search bar, and it's not super awkward.
Easy.
Yeah, it's easy. Okay, well, with that, then I guess we'll wrap up this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate us, share this with your friends, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Buzzsprout, Channel 17, Mayor's Facebook page. We're everywhere. If you're not listening, we're everywhere. You should be listening. Okay, we'll see you next week.